Imagine discovering that your husband's tenderness was only performance, your home was a cage, and your pregnancy made you more vulnerable, not more protected. As hidden messages unravel a pattern of deception, the woman at the center of this story realizes she is not facing an affair, but a predator who has done this before. Every smile hides a lie, and every signed paper may be a death sentence.
It was a foggy Tuesday evening in our San Francisco condo, 2 months from my delivery date, when my world shattered. Marcus was supposedly at a late night board meeting, securing another round of funding for his tech empire. I was meant to be his celebrated guest, the glowing, expectant mother, but exhaustion had pinned me to the sofa. Rest up, he'd whispered, kissing my temple, his jacket smelling of city air and expensive gin. He left his laptop open on the desk. I glanced over, planning to check a design blueprint, when a chat notification popped up on the screen. A woman named Amelia. Heard the pitch was a knockout. Can't wait for you to come home to me. My heart stopped. It had to be a mistake, a misdirected message, but I knew in that gut wrenching moment that I was living in a gilded cage, and the lock had just clicked shut. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Before we dive in, I'm curious where you're all from. Drop your city in the chat below. It's always amazing to see this community grow. Just a heads up, this story delves into intense psychological drama to explore very real themes. The characters are fictional, but the lessons about trusting your instincts are universal. The apartment smelled of the ocean and the white orchids Marcus had delivered weekly. They stood on the quartz countertop, their pristine petals a sharp contrast to the cold fear coiling in my stomach. Our home, perched high above the bay, was a masterpiece of glass and steel, a place where the Golden Gate Bridge felt like our personal sculpture. We had been married for 1 year, a fiery romance that began when I, Isabel Sterling, an architectural designer with a rising firm, met the city's most lauded tech visionary. My husband, Marcus Thorne, was charismatic, brilliant, and a decade my senior. His hand always felt so secure in mine. To the future, he would toast, his eyes crinkling. To our legacy. I would raise my sparkling water to his whiskey, my chest full of hope. Everyone called me the lucky one. My own team worried I'd sacrifice my career at Sterling Designs for him. Then Marcus appeared at a design symposium, speaking about smart cities with a passion he usually reserved for quarterly earnings, and my independent world was suddenly a shared one. I was 31, he was 41. His sister Catherine had always been polite but cool, which I wrote off as an heiress being protective of her brother. When you know, isn't that what they say? That's what I believed. Tonight, the fog rolled in, blurring the city lights into a soft, hazy glow. Our baby was due in the fall, just as the rains began. It was all supposed to be perfect. Then the laptop chimed again. Another message from Amelia. Marcus's screen flashed a preview. I saw every word. Is she asleep yet? I'm getting impatient. My hand shook as I reached for the mouse. He'd given me the password once to pull up a financial report. Genevieve 1988. His first wife's name. The one who had died in a tragic sailing accident years ago. I saw my own reflection in the dark screen. A woman about to unlock her own ruin. He was a respected CEO, a grieving widower, my husband. I shouldn't have clicked. I should have shut the laptop and demanded he explain. But I couldn't stop. I opened the chat history. It stretched back for months. Thousands of messages, photos, intimate plans. My blood ran ice cold. Amelia wasn't just a fling. She was his chief operating officer. They discussed business deals, stock options, and the pathetic cluelessness of his pregnant wife. My architectural firm, my life's work, he called it my cute little project. That's when my world cracked. I scrolled frantically, my finger trembling. This was more than an affair, it was a coup. The asset transfer is almost complete, one of Marcus's messages said. Catherine's lawyers are incredible. By the time the child arrives, everything will be protected in the Thorn Trust. I didn't get it. Protected from what? Amelia's reply clarified everything. And what about the primary investor? The investor? Me. Postpartum complications can be so unpredictable, Marcus had typed back. Especially for a first time mother, it will be a tragedy. A widower, again, so unfortunate. The breath was stolen from my lungs. The room started to sway. What about his first, Amelia had written? Her name was Genevieve. She was 32. They said a sudden squall hit their boat. No one ever questioned it. He was smiling in one of their pictures, his arm tight around Amelia, the city lights twinkling behind them, the same view from my window. This wasn't infidelity, it was a business model. My heart slammed against my ribs. This isn't happening. You are number two, Amelia's message said, sent just last night. Don't screw this up like he did with the first one. I'm not waiting another 5 years to take my seat on the board. I had built my life alongside him, trusting him with everything. Tonight, reading their plot, I knew I had to run. I shook my head, backing away from the glowing screen. This is a bad dream. You don't know what you're reading. She will be well cared for, Marcus wrote in his last message sent just an hour ago. My sister is ensuring the board stands with me. Her firm, her shares, her baby, it will all be absorbed into the Thorn legacy. She will just be a sad memory. He was planning to erase me. I glanced toward the bedroom. Marcus would be home any minute. His face, a mask of false affection. The man typed a new message. My name is Isabel Sterling. I ran my own firm for 10 years before he swept me off my feet. I have poured everything into building my own future. This child, it's all that's left of my family's name. Leave now, immediately. Leave and go where? I thought, my panic rising. The smart home security, the doorman, our shared accounts. He had control over it all. Go to the new site, a voice inside me urged. The community center. It's the one place that is still completely yours. Go now before he gets back. Don't call a friend. Don't alert anyone in his circle. Just vanish. I looked at a photo on the credenza, Marcus and I, his hand resting on my belly. Why would I believe a chat log? I whispered. His sister Catherine's smiling face in the photo seemed to mock me, because his first wife couldn't. Before doubt could paralyze me, my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up. Marcus. The sound was a siren screaming at me to run. The meeting was over. He was on his way. I looked at the laptop, at his smiling profile picture next to Amelia's. He was not the man I loved. He was a stranger wearing a familiar face. And for the first time in our life together, I felt a surge of raw, primal fear. When I looked back at the screen, I saw he was typing a new message to her. The three little dots pulsed. I didn't stay to read it. I didn't think. I just ran. My clutch sat on the bar. I snatched it, my fingers struggling with the latch. The city's biggest players were in this ballroom, all to honor my husband. I walked deliberately, not rushing, toward the gilded elevator to our penthouse. The descent felt agonizingly slow. The concierge smiled warmly. Heading out, Mrs. Thorne. I manufactured a smile, just forgot something at the studio. He nodded, pulling the heavy door for me. Boston's damp air was a shock. I walked a few blocks, my heels echoing on the brick sidewalk. Huddled in a doorway, I ordered a car. 3 minutes. I waited, my hand protectively on my belly. The black town car arrived. The driver met my eyes in the mirror. Rough night? He asked. You have no idea, I murmured. He drove onto Atlantic Avenue. I rested my head on the cold window, watching my world blur past. Historic buildings, chic restaurants, the park where he first whispered he loved me. The city I adored now felt hostile. I checked my purse. A couple hundred in cash, one company card for my design firm. It had to be enough. The email was seared into my brain. The lies about his first wife's tragic death. The way he and Simone planned their future. The way he'd kiss me goodnight and say, You're my everything, Claire. A year ago, I didn't even know Marcus Thorne. It was at a historical society fundraiser. I was a rising designer looking for wealthy clients. He was my knight in shining armor. Now I saw he was just a monster with a taste for new prey. Marcus stood by a colonial portrait and said, You look like someone Who knows if this is priceless art or just a clever tax shelter? I laughed. He had a gift for making you feel like the only person in the room. We spent that first night walking through Beacon Hill, talking about our dreams. He was a top corporate lawyer, a recent transplant from London after what he called a devastating divorce. He had my number before the night was over. By the holidays, we were a fixture. In March, on a snowy day in the public garden, he got down on one knee. I know it's sudden, he said, but I feel like I've known you forever. Build a life with me, Claire. I accepted. I was 35, pregnant, and done with being alone. We were married at City Hall the next week. No guests, just us. We took a weekend trip to the Berkshires. That's when he pulled out the tablet. We were on our suite's terrace. Darling, a quick bit of business, Marcus said, passing it over, for the baby's inheritance. I glanced at him over my coffee. What is it? Just estate planning boilerplate, he said casually. So we can set up the family trust. Sign right there. The air was crisp. The view was stunning. I felt safe, cared for. I traced my name on the screen. All set, I said. Wonderful, Marcus beamed. Now everything is sorted. I turned back to my coffee, enjoying the mountain view. I didn't think about it again. Until tonight, in my studio, staring at a confirmation for a $7,000 bracelet and trying to process Simone's name on a travel itinerary. The jeweler was one I didn't recognize. I called the card company. My car pulled up to my design studio, a beautiful space I'd built from nothing. It was my legacy, the only thing that was truly mine. I went inside, the scent of sawdust and fabric calming me. I logged into my business account. $85,000, my life's work, my child's security. I initiated a transfer to my private account, an account Marcus didn't know existed. I hit send. An error message popped up. Transfer rejected. Administrative hold on account. I felt a chill spread through me. I tried once more. Same message. Again. My stomach dropped. I dialed the bank's private client line. An agent picked up. I need to know why my account is frozen. I could hear keyboard clicks, a brief silence. Ma'am, a security hold was placed this evening by the authorized party with power of attorney. I'm the only authorized party. More clicking. Our records indicate full power of attorney was granted on March 22nd to Mr. Marcus Thorne. March 22nd, the Berkshires, the terrace, the tablet. I hadn't read a single word. No, I breathed. That can't be. You'll need to resolve this with Mr. Thorne, ma'am, or visit a branch in person. The line disconnected. I just sat there, phone in my hand, my office deafeningly silent. Simone's name on that Nantucket itinerary flashed in my mind. He's starting his new life with her. The studio suddenly felt like a prison. A framed picture of Marcus and me sat on my desk. He'd brought it last week, a gesture I found so sweet. Now it felt like a conqueror's flag on my territory. I went to the window looking out over the seaport. The city lights swam in my vision, and the truth hit me with physical force. I wasn't his partner, I was his latest acquisition. And my assets had just been liquidated. I didn't leave. I sat in my chair staring at nothing until dawn broke. At 7, I made coffee, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The agent's words echoed. Asterisk power of attorney granted on March 22nd. That morning on the terrace. The tablet, the inheritance document. I opened my laptop, my fingers stiff and clumsy, and searched my emails. There it was. An email dated March 22nd. From Thorne Legal Group. Subject, our family's future. I clicked it. A single sentence and a PDF. My dearest Claire, a digital copy for our records. I downloaded the attachment. My stomach churned as the file opened. The title read, Commonwealth Bank. Full power of attorney and asset consolidation mandate. It wasn't an inheritance document. It was a complete surrender. I scrolled through the 30-page file, my eyes barely focusing. Claire Marie Bennett hereby grants Marcus Thorne unconditional and irrevocable power of attorney over account number 4113, inclusive of all rights of withdrawal, transfer, and liquidation. Claire Marie Bennett, hereby grants Marcus Thorne full control over all business assets connected to Bennett Design Group. This agreement is effective immediately and unalterable without the notarized consent of both signatories. My signature was at the end. I read the fine print 3 times. The authorized party may initiate an immediate 7-day administrative hold on all accounts in the event of suspected unauthorized activity, without prior notification to the primary account holder. That's what he did. After his assistant accidentally sent me that itinerary, he must have known I'd move my money. He used the signature I gave him while we were planning our future to lock me out of my own life. By 8:30 a.m., I was on the phone with Commonwealth Bank. I'd showered in the studio's small bathroom and put on fresh clothes. I had a script: be calm, be clear, get this reversed. The branch manager, a Mr. Hayes, listened politely. I was deceived into signing this document. My husband claimed it was for our child's inheritance. This power of attorney must be revoked. I understand your position, Mrs. Thorne, he said, but without a notarized release signed by Mr. Thorne, my hands are tied. He defrauded me, I insisted, my voice trembling. If you suspect criminal fraud, you should file a police report. Until then, the 7-day hold is valid. When does it lift? It was enacted last night. It will be released on September 28th at 8 a.m., unless Mr. Thorne requests an extension. 7 more days. And he could just do it again. What if I need access to my funds? You will require Mr. Thorne's approval. I drove to our penthouse on Lakeshore Drive, needing to confront him. My key fob failed. The doorman blocked my path. Sorry, Mrs. Sterling, your access is revoked. Per Mr. Sterling's orders. A town car pulled up. His intern, Eleanor, got out, shot me a triumphant smirk, and walked into my building. I'm pregnant, I told Liam, my voice shaking with joy. He smiled, but his eyes were somewhere else. That afternoon, our bank flagged a $1 million transfer to a Vance Imports. Liam called it an art investment. I called my cousin Ben, who works in finance. Something's not right, Ava. I found nothing online about Vance Imports except that it was brand new. Ben called me back. It's a shell corporation, Ava, and the owner is listed as Eleanor Vance. My blood ran cold as I stared at a photo of her, with Liam from a charity event. That's his intern, I choked out. The transfer documents look legitimate, Ben said grimly. Argent Holdings was incorporated on August 10th. That was the day after our first ultrasound. She's the authorized agent. Liam set this up perfectly. For now, the money is legally hers. You have to fight this formally. The evidence was damning. Liam had used a private email, pretending to be a financial consultant, to recruit Eleanor. He offered her a small finder's fee to be the face of the company. She signed everything, believing it was a legitimate investment opportunity, a pawn in his scheme. In the gleaming lobby, I was met by the new head of security, a woman named Sophia. She had been here yesterday while I was at my art gallery, installing a new exhibit. She had given my husband Liam new access cards, reprogrammed the elevator for our penthouse, and cut me off from my entire world. It was all authorized by an email from a top-tier venture capital firm, backed by documents I couldn't hope to fight. I'm so incredibly sorry, Sophia repeated, her expression genuinely pained. I was too stunned to speak. She backed away toward her desk. I felt stranded in the vast empty space, staring at the elevator that now saw me as a stranger. I had nothing. I stumbled through the glass doors onto the Boston street. The crisp fall wind was a shock. Then I saw them. A gleaming Lucid Air and a black SUV were parked at the curb. Liam stepped out of the Lucid. He didn't seem surprised, just bored. From the SUV emerged an older woman, perfectly matching Sophia's description. 60-something, silver hair in a severe stylish bob, wearing a Chanel suit that was the price of a small car. Catherine Sterling, Liam's mother. She sized me up like a failed investment. Clara, Liam said, his voice flat. We need to talk. But his mother spoke first, her voice smooth and sharp. Miss Hayes, she began, there appears to be a misunderstanding. Catherine Sterling, a founding partner at Sterling Ventures, held out a sleek tablet. You signed over your interest in the property to the family fund on June 3rd, she announced, her tone icy. It is now under Liam's sole management. On the screen was a document from her firm. Asset Transfer Agreement, Suffolk County, Massachusetts. My name was listed as the grantor, Liam's as the recipient. The address was our penthouse on Commonwealth Avenue. A clause noted the transfer of assets worth $5 million. At the bottom, a perfect digital copy of my signature notarized electronically, dated June 3rd, 2024. That's a lie, I whispered. I'd never signed that. Catherine zoomed in on the signature. It's verified, Miss Hayes. The transfer is complete and legally binding. My mind raced back to June 3rd, a Monday. We were in Liam's home office. He said he needed my signature on some documents for his startup's next funding round. He'd called it Securing Our Legacy. I was distracted, looking at a catalog for nursery furniture, ecstatic about the baby. Just sign here, babe, he'd said, passing me the tablet. I'd scrawled my name without a thought. It wasn't for our legacy, it was for my ruin. It was a corporate takeover of my home, and I had happily endorsed it. You tricked me, I breathed, looking at Liam. You entered into an agreement, Catherine corrected me. Whether you read it is irrelevant. The original is filed. The transfer is done. A few people leaving the building slowed down to watch. Catherine raised her voice slightly, playing to the new audience. I understand this is an emotional time, but our firm handles these matters with complete discretion. Your attempt to reverse a legal asset transfer is highly irregular. I own that apartment, I insisted. I bought it with my own money. You did own it, Catherine said smoothly, before you signed it into the Sterling Family Fund on June 3rd. More people were staring. Catherine adopted a concerned tone. Miss Hayes is obviously overwrought. Pregnancy can be difficult, but this is a simple financial restructuring. She made it sound so clean, so professional, painting me as the unstable one. You're a monster, I managed to say, my voice shaking. You and your son are criminals. Our firm has an impeccable record, Catherine stated coldly. If you intend to slander a managing partner, I advise you to reconsider. The legal consequences are severe. The onlookers avoided my eyes. Liam had been silent, standing beside his mother, a look of curated pity on his face. Tell them, I pleaded. Tell them it's all a lie. He shook his head slowly. Clara, you're not well. This pregnancy has been incredibly stressful for you. Don't you dare, I spat. We think you need help, he said, his eyes flicking to Catherine. We're worried. Catherine nodded, her face a mask of false sympathy. There are wonderful private clinics, Miss Hayes. We can make arrangements. The lobby was closing in on me. The stairs felt like a physical weight. Liam moved closer. It's done, Clara, he murmured. You have no money, no home. Let us help you, for the baby. A cold fury erupted inside me. I turned and ran. I fled into the street, tears blurring the city lights. I heard my name, but it sounded far away. I didn't stop until I reached the edge of the public garden, collapsing onto a bench near the swan boats. My phone buzzed. It wasn't Liam. A text from a block number. It was short. The Hawthorne. 11 p.m. Ask for the corner booth. Don't speak to the Sterlings. It was signed Ben. I looked at the time. It was 9:30. I had an hour and a half and nowhere else in the world to go. A waitress guided me through the dim, crowded bar to a secluded booth. It was the sort of place built for quiet conversations and secrets. I needed secrets. I slid onto the leather banquette and saw a man was already there, nursing a drink in the shadows. Ben Carter. He looked worse than when I'd last seen him at a disastrous board meeting 6 months ago. His shirt was rumpled, his hair a wreck, and his face was pale. His hands, wrapped around a glass of bourbon, were trembling slightly. Miss Hayes, he said, his voice quiet and rough. He didn't stand. He just watched me with exhausted eyes that already knew my whole story. I sat down opposite him. You warned me, I said. Why should I believe you now? Because, he said, his voice filled with a weary anger, I know exactly what Liam Sterling is willing to destroy to get what he wants. And he will ruin you just like he ruined my sister. I won't let that happen. My hands instinctively shielded my stomach. What did he do to her? Isabella took a sharp sip of her iced coffee. Her name was Maya Sharma. She was a genius, a coder, barely 30. She and Ethan founded an AI company right after their master's program. A sad smile touched her lips, full of poison. Ethan was the pitchman, the networker. Maya was the one building the actual tech. They were set to marry in 2019. By that winter, he'd used legal maneuvers to seize her majority shares. So quickly, I breathed. That's how he operates. Isabella's jaw tightened. I told her he was a snake in a designer jacket. She said I was just being a jealous older sister, that she had everything under control. She looked down at her hands. She thought my warnings were just me being controlling. I practically raised Maya after our parents passed. She was everything to me. 3 months after the wedding, Isabella's voice dropped. They found her at the bottom of a cliff at Point Reyes, January 3rd, 2020. Fell during a solo hike, they said, tragic accident. But I know better. Her voice turned to ice. Maya hated hiking. The wind, the dirt, not a chance. And she had a faint mark on her arm, a fingerprint bruise. I saw it at the morgue. Someone held her. A cold red washed over me. I started digging, Isabella said. My family hired a PI for years. We had resources. We checked Ethan's history, his company's finances, everything. And we found them. Found who? The others. She slid a tablet across the small cafe table. On the screen was a list of 7 names. Lila Petrova, Isabella said, her finger tapping the first name. Married Ethan in 2009, dead from a sudden allergic reaction 4 months later. Ruled accidental. Her finger slid down. Camila Flores, 2012, a fatal boating accident in the bay. Operator error. Another name. Hannah Goldstein, 2016, a fire in her Nob Hill apartment. Faulty wiring. Her finger continued its awful path. Name after name, year after year. Sophia Marino, Chloe Yen, Jessica Williams, Ava Chen. Isabella finally met my eyes. And then Maya. 7 women in 12 years. All brilliant. All innovators with valuable patents. All married to Ethan Croft for less than a year. And every single one had their intellectual property and assets signed over to his mother's holding company right before they died. Patents, stock, everything. I felt like I couldn't breathe. You are number 9. Isabella explained there was another after Maya, a woman named Jessica Williams. Died last year, an overdose like the first one. The pattern is always the same. He marries them, secures their IP, and they die. Why isn't he in jail? I whispered. We tried. Isabella's voice was tight with frustration. We took everything to the SFPD in the summer of 2020. The list, the transfers, the autopsy reports. They looked. Financial Crimes Division, corporate fraud. They've had Eleanor Croft on their radar for 2 years. Her role at the firm, the shell companies, the timing, but they can't tie her to the deaths. Every death looks plausible. The paperwork seems legit. Ethan is careful, and his mother is a shark. What did she do? Isabella's face hardened. She buried us. November 2020, we were getting too loud. One day we're providing information to the DA. The next, our family business is drowning in frivolous lawsuits and IRS audits. The press painted us as bitter, greedy relatives. They destroyed our name. I listened in horror. A year of fighting in court bankrupted us. In the end, we lost our company. A restraining order now keeps us 1,000 feet from Ethan and Eleanor. We can't speak to investigators. We can only watch. Her fists were white. Then I saw you with him at that tech gala. You were smiling, his hand on your back. And I knew he'd found his next acquisition. Why not just warn me anonymously? He'd trace it, Isabella said flatly, and it wouldn't be enough. Once you sign those final asset transfer documents, Liam, it's done. And when you're gone, your architectural firm's portfolio will be his, just like the others. The cafe walls seemed to close in. The smell of coffee and pastries felt sickeningly out of place. What do I do? I asked, my voice a thread. Isabella leaned forward. We need irrefutable proof, something they can't dismiss. Eleanor is a meticulous monster, she said. She keeps everything. There's a private server in her office at the top of the Salesforce tower. I've had a digital security expert watching their network for a year. I know the firewalls, the data traffic, but I can't get past the biometrics. The restraining order means I'd be arrested on sight. She looked at me, her eyes burning with intensity. But you can. I shook my head, my heart hammering. I can't just walk into a corporate headquarters and hack a server. You are his husband, Liam, Isabella said sharply. If we don't act, you won't make it to your next trimester. And then he will find a 10th and an 11th. It never stops. Her words were a shard of ice in my gut. What's on the server? I asked. Everything, Isabella promised. The unedited contracts, the real insurance policies, the proof of what he did to every last one of them. The evidence of how Eleanor made it all disappear. I shut my eyes, picturing my firm's assets, the business I built from nothing. Ethan's charming voice replayed in my head. We're a team, you and I. Isabella was right. I had two choices: run and let some other person become the next victim, or stand and fight. My eyes snapped open. Tell me the plan. We left the cafe and stepped onto a quiet street in the Mission District. The city's vibrant nightlife felt a world away. Isabella walked with a tense energy, her hands shoved into her jacket pockets. I trailed a step behind, my mind a storm of fear and anger. I had said yes, but to what? I was still trying to grasp. There's a bar around the corner, Isabella said. The Alchemist. It's quiet. We can review the details there. I just nodded, feeling too numb to speak. The bar was a dim, moody place, tucked between a colorful mural and a closed bookstore. The space was filled with dark wood and the low hum of conversation, a classic San Francisco hideaway. A bartender with tattooed arms gave Isabella a brief nod of recognition before turning back to his work. We found a secluded booth in the back corner. Isabella ordered 2 whiskeys. I asked for water and let the ice melt. She placed a sleek carbon fiber laptop on the table. She booted it up, typed a long password, and turned the screen toward me. You need to see this, she said. It was a scanned copy of a journal page, written in elegant script. A woman was smiling in a small photo embedded in the file, her eyes bright and full of life. It was Maya. Maya kept a digital journal, Isabella explained. Most of it was deleted, but I recovered fragments from an old cloud backup. I leaned in to read the text. It was dated just a week before her death. It spoke of a growing fear of Ethan and his mother, of feeling trapped. And then one line stood out. He'll never find the Nightingale key, my one little piece of insurance. What does it mean? I asked. Isabella took a slow breath. Nightingale was the code name for the AI project she and Ethan started. It was her baby. After her death, Ethan sold it for a fortune. We think the Nightingale key is a physical data key. It probably holds the only unencrypted copies of their original contracts, her research, and maybe more. I looked at the screen. Maya's smile was haunting. Where is it? Her journal mentioned one last thing, Isabella whispered. The box at the beginning holds the key to the end. Before she met Ethan, Maya had one safe deposit box. It was at a small independent bank in North Beach. She opened it to store our parents' jewelry after they died. But you don't think it's just jewelry? Isabella's jaw was set. Maya was clever, she was a planner. Our work made us cautious. She knew how to hide things in plain sight. You think she was killed for it? I think someone wanted what was on that key, Isabella said. We were working on a deal with a major tech rival, a merger that would have diluted Ethan's control. Maya was about to expose his financial schemes. Then she was gone. My throat felt tight. Did you ever try to access the box? No, Isabella's voice was raw. The records vanished after her death. The bank was bought out a year later. All the old files were archived or destroyed. I tried to pursue it, but without a box number or an original key, I had nothing. And her will, she paused. It left everything to Ethan, cutting the family out completely. She said our protectiveness was suffocating her. She signed it 2 days before she died. A deep, cold dread settled in my stomach. She never told me any of this. She was trying to push me away to protect me, Isabella said, her voice cracking for the first time. He thought the silence would protect you from the truth about your mother. I pictured my dad, a man of few words, working two jobs. He'd been gone 6 years now, a heart attack taking him too soon, leaving me with just an old house and faded photos. No aunts, no uncles. Ethan put his hand on my swollen belly. I couldn't protect her, but I will protect you both. My eyes burned. I blinked back the tears. So, what's the plan? Ethan unrolled a second set of blueprints across the coffee table. One beacon court, overlooking the harbor. 40 floors. This is the penthouse unit. My firm handled the redesign in 2022. I know the layout. He circled the master suite in red. The doorman is an old friend, Ethan said. He works the 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift and won't ask questions. Her art studio is on the third floor, but the real damage is her hold over my father's estate. Last year's market downturn made him desperate. My sister reviews the trust statements every month, but she just scans the totals and signs off. If we're careful, we'll have a small window. What about the lawyers? My father's main account requires a two-factor verification. I don't have the codes, but I know who does. Who? His estate manager, a man named Philip. He works for my father, but he's been feeding me information for months. He knows my father is being manipulated. He gave me the access credentials and the location of the private ledgers. I stared at him. You've been planning this. For a while, Ethan said, but I needed a reason to act. Someone my father would never suspect. Someone who could access that study without raising an alarm. Me, you. I looked at the floor plan, at the red circle over the master bedroom, and tried to picture myself confronting my own sister in the middle of the night. It seemed surreal, impossible, but no more impossible than the last 24 hours. What's in the penthouse? I asked. A life. Ethan said my sister, Sophie, keeps everything there. Mementos, letters, proof of every dollar she's taken from my father. She's sentimental, arrogant. She doesn't believe in digital trails. Too easy to trace. Too impersonal. Everything's physical, kept in a safe Model S G710 with a biometric lock. Do you know the combination? Philippe gave me the first 4 digits. The rest we have to find on site. I shut my eyes. This was actually happening. When? I asked. Tomorrow night, July 10th. The regular doorman is a guy named Mark. He's a talker, likes to take long smoke breaks. We'll go up at 11:30 after his first rounds. We'll have until 1 a.m. I gave a slow, deliberate nod. Okay. Ethan rolled up the blueprints. There's something else. I looked at him. Your gallery, Ethan said. Clara B. Collins Fine Art. I've been watching Sophie. She doesn't just want my father's money. She wants to ruin his legacy, including the people he supports. Your gallery is part of that. It's worth what? Almost $1 million. My father is your primary investor, I said. $750,000 exactly, Ethan said. If your reputation is damaged, your father will pull his funding. And if your father pulls his funding, the gallery folds. Sophie could then persuade him to invest that money in her own projects. My stomach clenched. You think I'm next? I think she's already laying the groundwork. Ethan said, has she been acting odd lately? Overly helpful? Strangely interested in your finances? I thought of Sophie's phone call earlier. Sweet but dismissive. Your father showed me the gallery's quarterly reports. He thinks you're over-leveraged, I whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's her move. She plants seeds of doubt, creates a false narrative, isolates you. By the time my father realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. We have to speak with him tonight. Ethan said, before Sophie makes her next move. I stood up, my legs trembling. Let's go. We walked toward Ethan's car, a black sedan parked a block from our brownstone. The Boston streets were quiet. The city felt empty. I pulled up my phone and looked at Sophie's name. Do it, Ethan said softly, before she twists the story further. I hit the call button. 3 rings, then Sophie's voice, smooth as silk. Clara. Sophie, I need you to listen to me. I don't think that's a good idea. I stopped on the sidewalk. Please, just give me 5 minutes. I know what you told Dad. I know you showed him some report, some proof that I'm mismanaging funds, but it's not true, Sophie. You fabricated it. Just like you fabricated those invoices last year. Just like you've been fabricating this loving daughter act. Clara, stop. Her voice was ice. I can't begin to guess what's going on with you. Whether this is about the pregnancy hormones or if you and Ethan are having issues, you can't put me in the middle of it. This isn't hormones, I snapped, my voice cracking. Sophie is draining Dad's accounts. She's been doing it for years. She married him for his money, and now she's taking everything. My lawyer flagged a transfer for me this afternoon. Daniel cut in. A wire transfer, $300,000 from our joint trust into an offshore account in the Caymans, authorized by you. Your signature is on the withdrawal form. My blood ran cold. I never authorized that. It's dated September 12th, 2 days ago. The bank confirmed the funds are gone. September 12th, the day before Sophie warned me about the gallery's finances. Daniel, I didn't sign that. Then how did your name get on the document? I remembered the papers, the celebratory dinner for Dad's birthday. The stack of documents, Sophie said, were just tax forms. She set me up, I whispered, just like she did with the summer house. She had me sign a vendor payment on her tablet. I thought it was for the new caterer. Amelia, you need to listen to yourself. Daniel's voice became distant, professional. You're accusing your own sister of tricking you out of $300,000. Yes. And our father's home? Yes. And his personal art collection, too? Yes. I was shouting now. She used a forged medical directive. She emptied his accounts. She has a fake nurse living in his home. Her husband is a district judge. He helped her fake the paperwork. Daniel, I know it sounds crazy, but it's all true. I can't be a part of this, Daniel said. Our family attorney is meeting me tomorrow. If you want to contest this, you need your own counsel. But until this is sorted, you are not to contact Dad. I've already changed his number. I'm sorry, Amelia. I am, but the estate comes first. The line went dead. I just stood on the sidewalk, the phone feeling like a block of ice. David gently took it from my hand. She's already turned him against you. Yes, Sophie must have called him first, David said, showed him her version of the report, fed him her lies. By the time you called, Daniel was already on her side. It's Sophie's way. She isolates her victim, gets everyone on her side, and destroys their credibility. When you finally raise the alarm, you sound like the crazy one. She's going to take everything, I whispered, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. David nodded. Not if we expose her first. I tried calling Daniel's number again. It went straight to his voicemail. I left a desperate message begging him to check the bank security logs to verify the signature, to just listen to me. I knew it was futile. We have to get into the house, I said. Tonight? The original trust documents are my only proof that the signature was forged. Too dangerous, David countered. If Sophie is having you watched, and you know she is, she'll expect you to go there. Then what do I do? My voice shook. I have nothing. My inheritance, my father, my brother thinks I'm a thief. You have the truth, David said, and tomorrow we will use it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Amelia, I believe you. Be at the house at 10 p.m. I found something. Maria. I stared at the screen. Who's Maria? David asked. Dad's housekeeper, I said slowly. She manages the staff, handles the groceries. She's been with our family for 20 years. Can you trust her? I thought about Maria. She was quiet, loyal, always knew when something was wrong. I'm not sure, but she's the only one left. David looked concerned. It could be a trap, or she might actually be trying to help. Why would she? Maybe she saw something, or overheard Sophie on the phone. David was still doubtful. Or Sophie is using her to lure you there. I looked at the text again. 10 p.m. That was in 15 minutes. I have to go, I said, if there's even a small chance. Then I'm coming with you. I shook my head. No, if it's a setup, one of us has to be safe. You're the only person who knows the whole story. David's face was grim, but he eventually agreed with a nod. I'll be parked at the end of the block. If you're not out in 20 minutes, I'm calling the police. He handed me a small can of mace. The drive to my father's house was tense and silent. David pulled up about 100 yards away. I got out and walked up the long, familiar driveway. The Tudor-style home was a landmark in the back bay. All the lights were dark. I used my old key for the side door. Sophie hadn't thought to change that lock. The house was quiet inside, with only the dim glow from the security panel illuminating the hall. Maria, I whispered. No answer. I walked further in, past the grand staircase, and towards my father's study at the back of the house. The door was ajar, and a sliver of light escaped. Maria was at the large oak desk, a small box open in front of her. She was a small, older woman, her gray hair in a neat bun, her face etched with worry. Amelia, she said, her voice a hushed whisper. Thank God you came. Liam's assistant, Sarah, approached me at a cafe. I heard him on the phone with Eleanor, she whispered. He mentioned collateral in a storage unit, box 107, said it was untraceable. She pushed a piece of paper toward me. It's an address. I think you should have it. People like them shouldn't win. The server password felt foreign on my fingertips. David's car idled by the pier, its console light illuminating the tablet. I was back inside the system. I held up the screen. What did you find? He asked. The screen showed an unlocked icon. His private cloud archive, the family server. The entry key is his mother's birthday, 91456. David was in disbelief. How did you guess that? I overheard Richard on a call with Isabel, I told him. He said the legacy files were protected by the matriarch. Isabel must have seen me using it when she visited my studio last month. When she came to your office? I nodded. She was there this morning. David's jaw tightened. For what purpose? My fingers clenched. To orchestrate my removal. That morning, just 9 hours ago, I arrived at Golden Gate Designs before 9 o'clock. My access card still functioned. I was still reeling from the fight the night before. The false report filed with the city, David's warning, the thick bundle of cash Richard had pushed on me. I hadn't slept at all. I'd spent the night in a dingy hotel near the airport, staring at $5,000 in cash, planning my next move. By morning, I was resolved to confront Richard at the firm and show him the falsified invoices, the diverted funds, Isabel's entire pattern of deceit. But as the elevator doors opened, I knew something was deeply wrong. The office lights were bright. I heard voices from the main boardroom, low, serious voices, far too many for a Monday morning. I moved toward the sound. A dozen of our architects and staff were there, even the new intern we hired in July. Richard was on the main screen via video call, his expression grim. And standing beside the screen, looking coolly confident in a severe gray suit, was Isabel Croft. She met my gaze as I walked in, her face a neutral mask. Miss Astor, we were just discussing you. I halted in the doorway. What is this meeting about? Please have a seat, I'll remain standing. Isabel's smile was razor thin. She opened a leather-bound portfolio. This is a mandatory partners meeting. As of 8:40 this morning, Golden Gate Designs was made aware of significant financial irregularities in your project accounts. A cold wave washed over me. What are you alleging? She pushed a document across the conference table. I refused to touch it. One of our junior designers, a young man named Ben, picked it up. His eyes widened as he read. Then he looked at me with confusion. That is a wire transfer confirmation, Isabel announced. For $200,000, moved from the firm's operating account to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands, dated September 4th. The wire was initiated using your authenticated security credentials and approved by our bank. That's fabricated, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I never made that transfer. The bank has confirmed the transaction's authenticity, Isabel said, her voice cutting through the room. Mr. Sterling contacted me this morning in my capacity as legal counsel for his family's trust. Given the undeniable evidence of embezzlement tied to corporate assets, I have been retained to oversee this transition. I looked at the screen, at Richard's face, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Richard, I begged, you know this is a lie. You know I wouldn't. Clara. His voice was distant, defeated. I've seen the paperwork. I've spoken with our accountants. The money is gone. He forged my credentials. Effective immediately, Isabel's voice sliced in, sharp and final. Clara Astor is removed from her position at Golden Gate Designs for gross misconduct and misappropriation of funds. All system access is terminated. All professional licenses associated with the firm are suspended pending review. Security will escort you from the premises. The boardroom was utterly silent. I saw the faces of my team. Ben looked away. None of them met my gaze. Not my draftsman, not the project managers I had mentored for years. They studied blueprints or adjusted their chairs, looking anywhere but at me. You can't be doing this, I whispered toward the screen. It's for the best, Richard said, his tone empty. A bike messenger I'd never seen before was waiting in the lobby of our Pacific Heights condo, holding a manila envelope. For Isabel Croft, he said nervously. Richard finally looked at me then, his expression one of weary resolve. I'm sorry, Clara, the family's position must be protected. The messenger took a step forward. Ma'am, I wanted to rage. I wanted to smash the crystal vase on the console, to force Richard to admit what his lawyer, Isabel, was doing to us. But the household staff was there watching. They would all tell the story later. How Clara Astor finally snapped, how she was becoming unhinged, how Richard had no other choice. So I stood motionless. The messenger placed the envelope on the table. I took my handbag, my Loki drafting pencil, a book on urban design. My hands trembled so much I almost dropped the pencil. Nobody spoke. I rode the elevator down, the doors closing on the life I had built. I walked out into the foggy San Francisco morning, holding the pieces of my shattered world. A few people on the sidewalk glanced over. A man walking his dog, a cable car rumbling past, all of them silent witnesses to my fall. I reached the corner and had to brace myself against the building just to catch my breath. Now, sitting in David's car 11 hours later, the memory was a fresh wound. He cut you out from your own life, David said quietly. Isabel needed him too, I replied. She has to paint me as unstable. So when I try to fight this, when I tell everyone she's trying to destroy me, I just sound like the crazy wife he had to leave. David's hands whitened on the steering wheel. She's picking you apart, your reputation, your money, your entire identity. And it's working. He pulled the car away from the curb. We drove in silence for a few minutes, heading west toward the ocean. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass, the city lights blurring past. Then my stomach twisted. It wasn't anxiety or fear, it was something physical. A sudden, powerful surge of nausea that made me gasp. Pull over, I managed to say. David swerved into a bus lane. I barely got the door open in time, stumbling out to a trash receptacle before I was sick. Again and again, until my body was trembling. I leaned against a cold wall, my breath ragged, and saw my own distorted reflection in the dark window of a closed cafe. Pale, with dark circles under my eyes, my hair a wreck. I looked like a stranger. And then it registered. 3 weeks. I was 3 weeks late. I had been so consumed by the fight with Richard and Isabel, the blocked accounts, the arguments over the firm's direction, that I'd completely ignored it. My hand instinctively went to my stomach. Oh God, not now. Not this. A gentle touch on my arm. Clara! David's voice was filled with concern. Are you okay? I stood up straight, pulling my jacket closed. Yes, I'm fine, just stress. I took a shaky breath and got back in the car. David stared at me, his expression doubtful. You don't look fine. I will be, I promised, more to myself than to him. We started driving again. I sat perfectly still, one hand resting over my stomach as the awful suspicion took root inside me. Tomorrow I'd call a lawyer. Tomorrow the real battle would begin. But right then, all I could process was the terrifying possibility that I was carrying the child of the man who was allowing his mistress to ruin me. We drove on. David kept glancing at me with worry. I stared out at the dark expanse of the Pacific, my hand on my stomach, trying to deny the truth. After another mile, I finally spoke. Can you find a pharmacy? David's head snapped toward me. Right now, please. He made no comment, just swerved onto Michigan Avenue and pulled up to a 24-hour pharmacy a few blocks later. The sterile fluorescence inside felt harsh and unforgiving, making everything look bleached out. I'll wait right here, Liam assured me. I managed a small nod before heading in. The automatic door slid open with a soft whoosh. The place was nearly empty, save for a bored-looking clerk scrolling on his phone and someone buying allergy medicine. I moved past the makeup and seasonal aisles, heading for the pharmacy section in the back. The pregnancy tests were shelved beside vitamins and first aid kits. I grabbed 2 different brands, needing to be absolutely sure, and walked to the counter. The clerk rang them up without even looking at me. 32.50, he droned. I paid with the cash Liam had pressed into my hand. The women's restroom was located down a long, dim hallway. Inside, the fluorescent light buzzed overhead in the single stall. The door wouldn't lock properly. My fingers shook as I tore open the first package. The instructions were terrifyingly clear. 5 seconds, wait 3 minutes, a single line meant no. Two lines meant yes. I followed the steps. I set the small plastic device on the counter, then opened my phone to start a timer. 180 seconds. As the countdown began, I glanced at my reflection. I looked like a ghost. My hair was a mess, my eyes were red rimmed, and my skin was so pale it was nearly translucent. I looked like a woman whose life had just been shattered, which was true. But if two lines appeared, my life wasn't just shattered. It would be permanently chained to Ethan and his corrupt empire. I tried to recall my last period. Early May, maybe. Between scouting new properties and placating investors, lost in the illusion of a perfect partnership, I'd completely lost track. Then the world fell apart. The bitter fights, the icy silence, the deceit from Isabel, and my only focus was getting through each day. I was at least 2 weeks late, maybe more. My phone vibrated. I looked down at the test, two bold pink lines. I stared at them, wishing they would vanish, a flaw in the product, but they were stark and undeniable. They weren't fading, they were a definitive, devastating fact. Pregnant, probably about 6 weeks. That would have been our anniversary trip to Napa. The same weekend, Ethan promised the funding for my design firm was finalized. The same weekend, his partner Isabel called nonstop. I'd been carrying his child for over a month, completely unaware. My legs gave out. I slid down to the cold, tiled floor. The test clutched in my hand and just fell apart. Not silent tears, but wrenching guttural sobs that echoed in the tiny room. This was Ethan's child, the baby of a man who was letting his vindictive partner systematically ruin my career, a woman who coveted everything I had ever built. And now I was pregnant. If they knew, they would weaponize it. They'd file for custody, paint me as an unstable mother, and trap me in a legal battle for the next 18 years. Or worse, Isabel would view this baby as another asset, a future heir to the Holt fortune that she needed to control or remove. I considered the options I swore I'd never face: terminating it, adoption, disappearing to start a new life alone. But as my mind raced, I knew I couldn't. This child, this little piece of life growing inside me, didn't choose Ethan to be its father. It didn't choose any of this disaster. And neither did I. I rested a hand on my still flat stomach. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so incredibly sorry you're caught in this. But I would not let Isabel destroy us. Not anymore. If I was bringing a child into this nightmare, I would fight to give it a future free from the poison of its father's world." I got to my feet, dried my face, and looked in the mirror again. I didn't see a victim anymore. I saw a mother with everything to protect. I put the test in my bag and left the diner's restroom. Liam was leaning against his car across the street, his posture rigid. He spotted me, his expression hardening. I crossed the street, my voice tight. He just watched me approach. "Liam," I finally managed, "I'm pregnant." A heavy silence fell between us on the quiet street. I saw his face shift from disbelief to a raw, chilling fear. "Does Ethan know?" he asked, his voice low. "No, and he can't," I replied firmly. Liam's voice sharpened. "If he finds out, he'll use it against you. He'll claim you're mentally unfit, sue for sole custody, and bleed you dry in court. Or worse, he'll see this baby as a complication and accelerate his plans. You think he'd actually hurt me while I'm pregnant?" "I think he's ruined people for much less," Liam said. "And if something happens to you before the birth, he inherits everything as the grieving widower. The baby just becomes a tragic footnote." A cold dread washed over me. "Then he is not finding out," I said. "Not until he's in jail." Liam looked me straight in the eye. "What do we do now? I'm having this baby," I stated, my voice stronger than I felt. "I will make sure this child knows its father is a criminal, but that they are loved, protected, and will never have to live in his shadow." A hint of admiration flashed in Liam's eyes. Your father would be so proud of you. My throat tightened. I really hope so. Liam stood up straight. We don't have time to waste. To keep that child safe, we need undeniable proof. And we need to get it tonight. Tonight, I echoed. I thought all the records were locked down. They were, Liam confirmed. Before Ethan kicked you out of the firm. Before Isabel smeared your reputation. And before this, he gestured toward my stomach. The longer we delay, the more risk there is that Ethan discovers you're still in Chicago, finds you, and silences you for good. We go now. I held his gaze. Are we ready for this? No, Liam said bluntly, but I don't think we have a choice. I gave him the spare key from my wallet. Penthouse access, study safe, combination 826. Okay, I whispered. Let's do it. We climbed into his car. Liam started the engine and pulled away from the curb, heading south toward the loop. The Chicago skyline glittered ahead, a fortress of steel and light. Somewhere in that city, in a custom built safe in my old apartment, was the evidence I needed: the offshore account ledgers, the fraudulent permits, the files on 3 contractors who disappeared. I placed a hand over my belly. We are going to end this, I promised softly. I swear it. Liam said nothing, just pressed his foot down on the accelerator. By midnight, we were in his downtown office. A lone computer monitor cast a glow in the dark space. His office had a view of the river, 10 floors of modern glass and concrete. By day, it was home to a team of forensic accountants. Tonight, it was dead silent. Liam grabbed a small toolkit from his desk drawer, the instruments inside well used. I audited the security for Ethan's penthouse 5 years ago, he said quietly. He was the best financial investigator in the city. They never imagined I'd remember the safe's schematics. He pulled up a blueprint on the screen. A small green dot blinked on the layout. He zoomed in on the study. Encrypted locks, pressure sensors, the low hum of a ventilation system. Liam analyzed the schematic, his expression intense as he identified a weakness. He found a bypass, no direct assault that would trigger alarms and alert security. We had to go through an unsecured vent in the adjoining wall. 1 panel, then 2, then a third. The access points were old. The wiring was a model I recognized from a previous project. He mapped out the route with a precision that was both impressive and terrifying. 4, 5. Liam paused at the final wiring diagram, his hand hovering over the monitor as he listened. Silence. He highlighted the connection. The office beyond was dark except for a single painting. Monitors showed security feeds behind his desk. Their blinking lights reflected on the sleek mahogany. Firewalls for this account, encryption for that, the architecture of my husband's real estate empire. Liam pointed to the screen showing the study's interior layout. A single panel glowed red. He has a pressure plate under the rug, he whispered. Completely off the books. I had to pull the original building specs to even find it. We navigated the digital floor plan, our clicks echoing in the quiet office. My pulse thundered in my ears. Every move felt like a gamble. A safe, designated the Lakeshore Legacy, was the final obstacle. A digital lock icon glowed beside it. Liam cracked his knuckles over the keyboard and began typing in a series of commands. A moment later, a numeric keypad appeared on screen. Inside that safe was a digital record of Ethan's first big deal. A large oak desk, a virtual background showing a sweeping view of the Chicago skyline. Liam navigated to a set of digital files on the virtual desktop. Get me into that archive, he said. I scrolled through them. Richard at conferences, Richard ringing the opening bell. But one image stood out. A small framed photo on his virtual desk. A sailboat, the Odyssey, cutting through the bay. His first major extravagance. David magnified the picture. Behind the frame, a nearly invisible watermark was etched on the digital wall. A short string of characters. A recovery prompt. David entered it, and the password field changed. It now showed 6 empty boxes. What's the password? I whispered. The hint says Odyssey, David said, but that's too obvious. He typed 1999. The field blinked red. Incorrect. The year he launched his first startup, David said. It was a long shot. He tried again, 2017. Red again. Incorrect. The year his mentor passed away, I offered. He might have used it. Or, David said, clicking on a calendar invite I had sent him. We could just use the date he always talked about. He glanced at me and I nodded. I leaned over and typed 0618. The screen flashed green. A quiet chime sounded through the speakers. The archive was open. The folder was small but contained everything. David opened a secure drive and started copying the files. A master ledger was at the top. It was bland, corporate, the kind of document that looked like it held 1,000 secrets. Under it were 10 encrypted archives. Each was labeled with a project code, PHCXMSR, and next to them a single audio file with a simple tag, Sophia 2023. At the bottom, a hidden partition labeled Archived Estates. Leo's fingers flew across the keyboard. He dragged the encrypted ledger and a bundle of audio notes into a transfer window. Next came the subfolders, then the transaction logs. What is all this? I whispered. No idea, Leo muttered. But Richard wouldn't use this level of encryption for old tax returns. He started the download and glanced at the time. 1:42 a.m. His phone will flag an unusual login any second, Leo said. We have maybe 2 minutes before he locks us out. Just then, a notification pinged silently on the monitor. A login attempt from Richard's phone. His profile picture appeared. He's checking. What do we do? We wait. Leo initiated the data cloaking sequence, dragging our session into a virtual machine. Stay calm, Leo whispered. We watched the green progress bar inch forward. Richard's session was now live, his cursor navigating the cloud drive. He was seconds away from finding the active download. We hid inside the system's cache, ready to sever our connection. My heart hammered. My stomach felt tight as a drum. My hand instinctively covered my bump. The child I had to save from this. Richard's cursor hovered over the transfer log. The download completed. Leo hit the kill switch. We were gone. The remote connection vanished with a soft snap, leaving us in the quiet glow of the monitor. Richard's cursor moved over the partition, slow and deliberate. It paused on the access history. I stopped breathing. Leo's hand gripped my arm. A silent comfort. The log icon flickered once, then went dark. He was reading it. For a terrifying second, the screen was still. Then his profile picture vanished, fading into the background. Leo let out a shaky breath. Let's see the damage. He transferred the files to a secure offline drive, then physically unplugged the modem from the wall, plunging us into network silence. The glow of the monitor was the only light in his darkened study. I collapsed into a leather armchair, my hands still shaking. We have it, I whispered. Leo was silent, his eyes fixed on the screen. He opened the main file. A meticulously organized ledger appeared, its columns casting a pale light on his face. And there, on the very first row, was a name that made my blood run cold. Blackwood Textiles, 2018, hostile buyout, liquidation, $18 million. He isolated the laptop from all networks and killed the lights. Boston's glow didn't penetrate this room, leaving just the screen's stark light. 12:10 a.m. He mounted the drive, letting the decryption software run. The ledger file was on top, dense with information, the record of a silent war. Leo set it as the desktop wallpaper. I moved closer as he clicked into the first record. The text was precise, clinical. At the very top, a single name, Blackwood Textiles. Under it, the grim details. Year 2018. Method leveraged buyout, debt consolidation. Assets liquidated $18 million. Case closed, March 22nd, 2018. Leo's hand was a fist as he scrolled down. Chen Imports, year 2019. Method patent infringement, supply chain collapse. Assets seized $34 million. Bankruptcy filed June 2nd, 2019. Another one, Bennett Holdings, year 2020. Insider trading, short sale, $29 million. The probe was dropped. October 30th, 2020. David kept reading. His voice was a grim monotone as he listed the shell corporations. Apex Industries, 2019. A hostile takeover worth 41 million. Nova Health, 2020. A data breach that crippled them for 52 million. Ridgeback Investments, 2021. A proxy fight that bled them for 48 million. I felt a wave of nausea. Each name was a family business, a life's work. Someone who saw a partner in Liam just like I did. Someone who signed papers they didn't grasp, who believed his promises, who lost it all convinced it was their own failure. David scrolled. Sterling Holdings. My heart stopped. Year 2022. Method patent theft, market sabotage. $41 million drained. From my grandfather's firm, investigation closed. March 15th, 2022. David looked at my family's name on the screen. His jaw set. His hand froze on the mouse. Chloe, I'm so sorry, he said softly. He didn't wait for a reply, just moved to the next line. Vanguard Tech, year 2023. Method corporate espionage, intellectual property theft. Assets liquidated for $77 million. The deal was finalized December 3rd, 2023. The case was closed December 18th, 2023. 7 companies, 5 years, nearly $400 million. David clicked a different tab. It was empty, save for one line in that same cold font. CST, the Chloe Sterling Trust, activated upon birth of a male heir. $525 million. Sterling Gallery voting shares, 90 million. Total value, 650 million. Transfer scheduled for September 10th, 2024. I stared at the screen. My due date. September 10th was my due date. My hand flew to my belly. A son. If I had a son, Liam would get it all through our marriage and as the father. The trust, the gallery, my entire family's legacy would be his, and my family would be bankrupt. You were the final acquisition, David said, his voice barely a whisper. The end game. I couldn't breathe. David closed the file and opened a secure folder. He brought up a series of encrypted audio files. 12 of them, each marked with a company's initials. He played the first. I didn't want to hear it, but I was frozen. The audio was my father's head of security being coached by Liam on how to plant false evidence against a competitor. The file's metadata showed it was recorded in Liam's own office. It was so calculated, so cold. He wasn't just committing a crime, he was destroying my father's closest friend. Sterling Holdings, David said grimly. He clicked the next file. An audio clip, the CCO of Vanguard Tech, a woman, her voice breaking as Liam accepted her company's forced buyout. Vanguard, David said. He played them one by one. Each file was a weapon. Each recording showed a business titan being utterly broken. When he got to the 12th file, he paused. It was labeled VC date, pending. It was empty. David examined the file's properties. In the source comments, written in plain text, was a message. L must not falter. This is my failsafe. It was from Victoria. If he tries to cut me out, this all goes public. I stared at her words. She was holding this over his head. Blackmail, David confirmed, against Liam. If he ever abandoned her, ever tried to make her the scapegoat, she had an arsenal to prove he was the architect. She's been his handler for years. This is monstrous. This is Victoria. David's face was pale. She was never his partner. She owns him. He copied the audio recordings to a secure drive, his hands shaking. He then opened the folders for his hidden finances and burner phones. He arranged them on the screen. This is everything, he said. The offshore transfers, the recordings, the internal reports he suppressed. It's more than enough to lock them both up for decades. Then why do you look so terrified? David navigated to one last encrypted file I hadn't noticed. It was labeled with that same precise font, CS Exit Strategy. He opened it. A single document appeared. A one-way flight itinerary booked for tonight, October 17th, 2024, in my name. The chat log was titled Project Nightingale. I zoomed in. Arthur angled the tablet so I couldn't see. Item 1, benefit dinner, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Pinnacle. Solidify perfect couple image. Key city developers will be attending. Item 2, incapacitation, 8:15 p.m. lorazepam, 2 milligrams provided by I. Restaurant manager will serve the champagne. Item 3, relocation 10:30 p.m. target sedated. Drive to Starved Rock State Park, Lovers Leap Trailhead. Item 4, resolution 11:30 p.m. Guide, target to overlook, 125-foot drop, a gentle push, no signs of a struggle. Item 5, alert, morning, November 2nd. Reports target missing. Search begins. Body discovered by noon. Ruled a tragic sleep due to pregnancy related dizziness. I couldn't breathe. They're going to kill me tonight, I choked out. Ben's face was grim. We have less than 12 hours. What's the plan? Ben pointed at the initial on the screen. He said, Arthur's COO. Isabel. She runs the Pinnacle's parent company. She's his partner in this. I remembered the sudden server crash at the firm, the chaos. Ben slipping me a flash drive while Arthur was berating the tech team. That's why you warned me about the company servers, I said. You knew. Ben gave a faint nod. I've been monitoring Arthur's back channels for months. I saw the encrypted messages. I knew what they were planning, but I got away. You did, Ben confirmed, which means they're moving to Plan B. What is Plan B? Ben opened the next decrypted file. The same cold text appeared on the screen. Contingency. If target is not resolved, activate Phase 2. Initiate professional ruin. Fabricated evidence of leaking architectural bids. Use City Hall contacts to freeze her license. Force a court-ordered psychiatric hold, North Shore Wellness Center. Neutralize in transit or at the facility. Stage as a pregnancy-related breakdown. My heart went cold. They're going to have me declared incompetent, I whispered. Or have you committed, Ben said, exactly what they tried to do to my former boss. I looked at the hidden bank transfers, the audio clips, the murder plot. What are we supposed to do? I asked. Ben closed the tablet. We expose everything, he said, before they can bury us. Wait, let me show you the project file. Yes, they created a whole timeline to get rid of me. Comment, expose to see the details. A warning, this contains a fictional scenario for awareness. If this is too much, feel free to keep scrolling. But if you stay, you'll see how predators operate. Ben didn't close the file. He just sat there, staring at the plan, his face pale. Show me again, I said. I need to see every single detail. He reopened the window and tilted the screen. Project Nightingale schedule. Date, November 1st, 2024. Phase 1, dinner, 7 to 9 p.m. The Pinnacle Restaurant. Establish alibi. Target must be seen socializing with A in a public space. At least 5 confirmed witnesses. Phase 2, sedation, 8:15. PM Agent Isabel Croft, COO, will arrange complimentary cocktails. Lorazepam, 2 milligrams, dissolved in the drink. Target will show effects within 10 minutes. Confusion, loss of balance, slurred words. Will assist target to the vehicle, telling guests she's feeling unwell from the pregnancy. Phase 3, transport, 10 to 10:30 p.m. Drive to Starved Rock State Park, Main Cliff Overlook. GPS coordinates 41.3189 degrees north, 88.9946 degrees west. No park rangers, minimal traffic after dusk. Phase 4, staging, 10:30 to 11:15 p.m. Walk target, half a mile along the path to the main bluff. Elevation gain, 125 feet. Target will be unsteady but cooperative. Position target near the unfenced edge. Phase 5, execution, 11:30 p.m. Push target from the cliff. A 125-foot fall onto the rocks below. Ensure the scene looks accidental. No defensive wounds. No signs of a struggle. Lorazepam becomes difficult to trace in the system within 24 hours. A toxicology screen will likely be inconclusive. Phase 6, discovery, morning, November 2nd. Will report the target missing at 8 a.m. A park search will be organized by 10 a.m. The body will be located by noon. A medical examiner, a contact of eyes, will rule the death accidental, caused by a dizzy spell. The case will be closed within 2 days. I was numb. They planned every single second, Ben said, his voice quiet. Isabel was going to drug you. Arthur would have walked you down that path while you were barely conscious. Then he would have shoved you off a cliff and called it a tragedy. But I left, I said. I had a dizzy spell at 8:30. I had to go home. Ben nodded. That dizzy spell saved your life. By the time Arthur realized you were gone, phase two was scrubbed. He couldn't drug you, he couldn't get you to the park. Was that you? I asked. Did you do something? Ben just looked at me. It doesn't matter now, he said. What matters is that Plan A failed. So they launched Plan B. He pulled up the next file. Plan B contingency activated November 1st, 2024, 9 p.m. Target has evaded phase 1. Alternative resolution strategy now active. Step 1 discredit and isolate. Step 1 psychological isolation. Amplify Olivia's anxieties about her new gallery using my associate, Victoria Croft, to sow seeds of doubt. Step 2 asset seizure. Introduce a trust agreement ostensibly to protect her family inheritance with a clause granting me full control. Secure her signature. Step 3 discredit her. Document every emotional outburst, every argument, twisting them into a narrative of instability. Get statements from staff confirming her erratic behavior for a custody hearing. Step 4 execute. File for divorce citing mental distress. File a motion for a mandatory psychiatric hold using our contact at Bellevue to ensure it is approved. The objective, render her a non-fit bover and gain sole custody. Step 5 consolidation. With Olivia institutionalized, all marital and trust assets revert to me. Estimated time frame 60 days. Projected gain $7.5 million. I gasped for breath. He's going to paint me as crazy, I said, my voice shaking. He'll take our son. Ben stared at the tablet. This is a meticulously planned attack, Olivia. Victoria's digital signature is on every file. She's a monster, I whispered, the words on the screen blurring. This is how she's destroying me. She tried the same thing with Ethan's last partner. Ben said darkly, You're not going to let that happen. I saw the cold corporate strategy laid out before me, a business plan for my ruin. There's more, Ben said quietly, opening another folder, a series of encrypted messages between Victoria and a private detective. The next folder was labeled Project Lark Phase 2. He opened it. A dossier appeared. Sofia Lorenzi, age 35. Occupation lead violinist for the New York Philharmonic. Net worth $2.1 million. Key assets: a Stradivarius violin, a pre-war apartment on the Upper West Side, and significant family investments. Status: single, grieving the recent loss of her father. Vulnerability: emotionally raw, seeking a patron for a new composition. Timeline: initial approach scheduled for October 11th, 2024, exactly 2 weeks after O's planned institutionalization. Below the dossier was a draft email. Dear Sophia, I'm Ethan Thorne. I was profoundly moved by your performance tonight. As one who has also known deep loss, your music resonated with me. I would be honored to sponsor your new work. Perhaps we could discuss it over coffee? No pretense, just a fellow artist offering support. Ethan. Bile rose in my throat. He's already found my replacement, I choked out. 2 weeks, Ben said, his jaw tight. 2 weeks after they lock you away, he sends this message. Sophia will think she's found a kindred soul. 6 months later, she'll be another footnote. I stared at her smiling photo, violin under her chin, completely oblivious. We have to tell her, I said. We will, Ben replied, but we need to make a bigger splash. If Ethan silences you, Victoria will erase all this. He'll disappear and Sophia will be next. What do we do? Ben started packing his laptop. We release everything tonight before they even know we have it. How? There's a reporter at The Guardian, Ben said. A digital forensics specialist. An absolute shark. She backs up everything she's ever sent. It all goes public. If you show her these files, the insurance policies, the whole plan for Sophia, if you expose Ethan and Victoria to a real investigator, they can make this go away. The whole world will be watching. Ethan will have security on me the moment I walk out that door. Not if the press comes to us, Ben said. I know someone, Jasmine Calloway. She's been investigating Ethan's hedge fund for over a year. If I tell her we can prove his other schemes, the dossiers, the policies, all of it, she'll meet us. She can offer protection. Hope sparked in my chest. You think she'll listen? She will when she sees this tablet. A sudden beep from Ben's laptop startled us. a security alert from his building's network. Ben's face went pale as he looked at the screen. We both glanced toward the window. A man stood across the street, dark suit, an earpiece, his gaze fixed on our building. Ethan's security. He's watching the building, Ben whispered. Don't move. The man spoke into his wrist. Another man appeared at the corner. My heart hammered against my ribs. The second man raised his phone, pointing it directly at our window. I shrank back from the glass. Ben let out a sharp breath. We have to go now. He grabbed the emergency exit keys. We took the service elevator to the garage. We drove for 3 blocks with no headlights before he merged onto the FDR drive. The guardian's office, I said. We go this afternoon and tell her everything. Ben nodded. 5 p.m. That's when his gala begins. Be ready. I clutched the tablet. Sophia's trusting face burned into my memory. I'm ready, I said. Ben accelerated into traffic. 2 blocks, 3. I was just starting to breathe again. Then 2 sets of headlights flooded the rearview mirror. Ben, they're on us. 2 Range Rovers, and they're closing fast. The lead vehicle, a dark gray model, swerved right beside us. I saw the driver's face in the dashboard light. Ethan. The second car, a black one, screeched in front of us, cutting off our path. Ben yanked the wheel, but there was nowhere to go. The sedan fishtailed to a halt on the wet pavement. Step out of the vehicle, Ethan's voice boomed, amplified and cold. Ben reached for his phone. Stay inside. My passenger door was torn open. Rough hands seized me. I fought back, but an arm was twisted hard behind my back, sending a shock of pain through my shoulder. Stop! A woman's voice commanded. Not mine. Victoria. I was hauled out and slammed against the car's hood, the cold, damp metal stinging my cheek. My head swam. 2 men in tactical gear pulled Ben from the car. He didn't resist as they zip-tied his hands. Then, Victoria stepped out of the black Range Rover. She looked straight at me, her expression unreadable. Victoria, I pleaded. Please, I contacted him. Victoria said, her voice flat. You illegally accessed a secure server, Olivia. I had no other choice. He's using you. Don't? Victoria raised the tablet. I have the gallery's financials, the private audits, all of it. Ethan walked over, immaculate in his tuxedo. He gave me a thin, condescending smile. Show her, he said to Victoria. Her thumb moved across the screen. She turned it to face me. A fraud alert. Subject, Sterling Bank internal breach. Immediate action required. I saw the text. My name, my gallery's acquisitions account, a wire transfer of $250,000 to an offshore entity in the Cayman Islands. The digital signature was a flawless imitation of mine. That's a forgery, I said. Victoria, that's not real. The bank's own security team verified it, Victoria stated. I spoke to their director. Because Ethan owns their director, I yelled, my voice breaking. He forged that signature just like he forged the deed to my brownstone, just like he forged those trust documents. Victoria swiped to a new page. And this loan agreement, file number 3912, approved. Amount $750,000 paid to Thorn Capital. Submitted August 19th, 2024 at 11:52 p.m. That account requires 2 authentications, Ben. I never approved it, I whispered. Your security key was used for the final confirmation, Olivia, Ethan said softly. The firm server shows the timestamp. 11:52 last night. That's when I trailed off. It was almost midnight. I was in Ethan's study going over old auction catalogs. He must have used a keylogger he'd installed on my laptop weeks ago. It's fraud, I said, desperate. Ben, he's draining our inheritance too. Check the brokerage accounts. He's selling your shares. Enough. Ethan's voice cut through the air. He stepped forward, and I saw he was holding my tablet. The one with the drive, the photos, the payout records, everything. You should have focused on the nursery, Ethan said. He unlocked the tablet, navigated to the hidden folder. He held it up for Ben to see. It's nothing, Ben. Just look at it, I cried. It's proof of the payoffs for Victoria, for all of them. Ben, the cover-ups. Ethan opened the first file. Amelia Hayes, 2018. Accidental death. $700,000. For a moment, Ben's confident facade fractured. Confusion flickered in his eyes. Then Ethan dragged the file to the trash icon and emptied it. No, I lunged for it, but one of the security men caught my arm, pulling me back. Ethan opened another file, Isabella Rossi, then deleted it. Another, a zoning violation. That's Victoria's cousin, I choked out. She died in 2018. He let her fall, Ben. He paid off the foreman to make it look like an accident. Ethan deleted Amelia's file. The icon disappeared. Ben made a low, strangled noise. The guard shoved him back against the car. Stop! I screamed. Ethan closed the folder, tucking the tablet away. Then he looked at Ben. She hacked the firm's encrypted network tonight, Ethan said, his voice calm. She and your sister stole proprietary corporate data. Her company credentials are all over my private servers. The access logs will show her and this man, he pointed at Ben, sharing proprietary designs after hours. That's intellectual property theft. Thomas looked at me, then at Ben, then back at the blank tablet. I don't get it, Thomas said softly. You don't need to, Arthur said. The corporate attorneys will take it from here. He turned to the two men with him. Where are we taking them? One asked. Arthur tapped on his phone. Sending you the address now. It's a private wellness retreat in Highland Park. Room 32. Keep them in separate suites. I'll have our legal counsel draft a statement tomorrow. The man nodded. Hold on, Thomas's voice was shaking now. You aren't calling security. Our lawyers want to contain this first, Arthur said calmly. Keep it internal. Get all our facts straight before this blows up publicly. That isn't right. It's how we handle these things, Thomas. Arthur's voice was gentle, condescending. Trust me, I've managed delicate corporate matters before. This is procedure. Thomas wavered, then agreed. I wanted to scream to tell him Arthur was a liar, that there were no lawyers, that we'd be gone by morning. But a firm hand was on my arm, pulling me up. Ben's eyes found mine across the room. I'm sorry, they seemed to say. The men led us to a dark SUV. They put Ben in the front and guided me to the back, where a woman in medical scrubs was waiting. The last thing I heard was Arthur's voice. Thank you, Thomas. I know that was difficult. Just make sure she gets some help, Thomas said. She's not herself right now. The car door shut. The engine purred, and we pulled away. I don't know how long we drove. An hour maybe. The air smelled of antiseptic. My fingers ached from clenching my purse. My stomach twisted with every silent, smooth turn of the wheel. When the town car pulled up, a firm hand helped me out. My head was spinning. Someone guided me into a sleek, minimalist lobby. I heard the whisper of a keycard, marble floors, then another door, and a gentle nudge inside. The door clicked shut. I was in a guest suite, maybe 12 by 12. Gray walls, a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking a city I didn't recognize. No television, no art, just a king-size bed and a crushing, sterile silence. The lock on the door engaged electronically. I was alone. I don't know how long I just stood there. It felt like hours. The city lights began to blur as evening fell. An entire night slipped by before I heard anyone approach. A whole night in that quiet cage can rebuild you. I sat on the edge of the mattress, my hand on my stomach, and tried not to think about the baby. Tried not to think about what Liam was telling everyone or where he was. Tried not to think about Isabel in her corner office, orchestrating this whole performance, erasing me. I thought about my mother instead. I was 10 when we lost her. I can't picture her without a little sadness. But I remember her voice, calm and warm. The kind of voice that promised you could weather any storm. When you feel trapped, she'd once told me, find the loose thread. There's always a way to unravel things. You just have to pull. I dug out my old tablet from my purse. The screen cast a pale glow. 6:01 in the morning, 14% battery, no Wi-Fi. I checked my clutch. The men who brought me here had taken my phone and my wallet, but missed the little things. A fountain pen, a small silver locket, and tucked into a rip in the silk lining, the tiny USB drive. Isabel's assistant had dropped it during our chance meeting at the cafe. Insurance, he'd whispered. I copied the real pre-IPO financials, the ones they buried. If something happens to me, you'll still have the truth. I held the drive in my hand, the metal cool against my skin. The proof. Not all of it, but a start. Isabel had the board, the access to the servers, but this was a foundation. Scanned contracts, hidden agreements, proof that couldn't just be explained away in a meeting. The silence was suffocating. I clicked on my locket's tiny light. The beam was faint, barely illuminating my own hands. The switch lights were motion activated, and I'd been still for too long, or maybe they cut the power to the room. I was alone in the dark and no one was coming for me until the tablet vibrated. I almost fumbled it. The screen flared to life. One bar of a cellular signal, weak and unsteady, but it was there. A message on a secure app. Timestamp 5:45 a.m. Unknown contact. I tapped it open. Clara, this is Ben, Isabel's former analyst. I'm sorry, I helped her fabricate the quarterly reports. I can't live with it. The real data is on the offsite server. Password is ACL2016. The original investment deck is there. Liam only shredded the paper copies. Meet me at the ferry building at 4 p.m. I'll give a statement. P. I read it again and again. My hands were trembling so badly I could hardly see the screen. Ben, Isabel's quiet, terrified analyst, the one she always belittled in meetings. He'd helped her commit fraud. He'd watched Liam lie to investors for months, and now he was ready to talk. I had no idea if it was real. I didn't know if this was just another lie, but the information felt solid. The original data was on a server. Isabel had doctored the reports, but the source files were left behind. Maybe she thought no one could access them. Maybe Liam didn't even know. Either way, the files were there. And if I could just get to them, the door hummed and swung open. Morning sun streamed in, blinding me after the long night. I threw a hand up, my eyes watering. A figure was outlined in the doorway. Not Liam, not his security team. Someone new, a young woman, looking confused. Ma'am, the voice was soft, professional. You can't be in here. This suite is being prepared for a new arrival. I blinked, my vision clearing. A concierge. Early 20s, dressed in a sharp hotel uniform, different from the plain suits the men wore. A morning shift. She was out of the loop. She didn't know. I am so sorry, I said, my voice raspy from disuse. I was just leaving. My husband booked the room. I must have overslept the checkout time. The concierge tilted her head. Checkout? We don't have any departures scheduled for this floor today. I work for his wife, I lied. I was just dropping off a bag for her. The door must have locked when I left. She studied me, my wrinkled dress, my tired eyes, but I didn't look dangerous, just like a woman who'd had a terrible night. You should check with the front desk, she said with a polite smile. But yes, the main entrance will be open in about 30 minutes. You'll need to leave then. Thank you, I breathed. I hurried past her into the silent, carpeted hallway. The air in the lobby was cool and smelled of fresh flowers, and I inhaled like I had forgotten how to breathe. The concierge watched me go, a flicker of doubt in her eyes, but she didn't call anyone. I walked to the edge of the fountain out front and checked my tablet. 7:02 a.m. The single bar of signal was holding. I tried calling Liam straight to a polite corporate voicemail. I tried his private line. Nothing. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. He was still in the city preparing for his triumph while I was locked away. I dialed my sister, Sophie. She answered before the first ring finished. Clara. Her voice was sharp with anxiety. Where in the world are you? I've been calling you since midnight. I'm at the St. Regis downtown, I said. Can you come get me? Are you okay? No, I whispered, but I'm going to be. Just get here, I'm on my way. 10 minutes. I hung up and sank onto a marble bench, my body trembling. The sun was glinting off the skyscrapers, casting sharp shadows on the street. Somewhere in this city, Liam was rehearsing his speech. Somewhere, Isabel was confirming their lies. Somewhere, his mother was waking up, still certain that I was the one who was unwell. But I had the USB drive. I had Ben's message. And I had 9 hours until the launch party. 9 hours to get the server files. 9 hours to call my lawyer. 9 hours to make sure that when I walked into that party, I had enough power to burn Liam Vance and his family's empire to the ground. Sophie's Tesla, a sleek black model, pulled silently to the curb. She jumped out, her face pale, and pulled me into a fierce protective hug. What's our play? She whispered into my hair. I held up the small USB drive. It's all here. The fake reports, the hidden partnership agreements, all of it. I need everything from that offsite server, and I need to get into that launch party by 6. Sophie pulled back, her lawyer face snapping into place. What's the objective? I'm going to tell my side of the story, I said, in front of all his investors on a live stream that Liam and his mother can't possibly shut down. Sophie gave a single sharp nod. Okay, let's go. We slipped into the car. She pulled into traffic and headed for her office in the Embarcadero Center. I glanced at the tablet. 7:19 a.m. I had 8 hours and 41 minutes. It would have to be enough. The morning was a frantic race. By 7:45, Sophie and I were in her glass-walled office overlooking the bay. The USB drive felt heavy in my palm. I hadn't slept at all. My tablet battery was at 7%. But I had the one thing Liam never counted on: a complete backup of his fraudulent financials, the real cap table, and Isabel's internal emails about me. Inside, the office was quiet and smelled of coffee and leather. A young paralegal named Alex helped us connect my tablet to a secure network. I typed in the server address: 60 gigabytes, the real investment deck, the unedited audio files of their meetings, the payout schedule for their shell corporations, and Isabel's notes, and 2 video files. The first was surveillance footage of me, edited to look like I was meeting with a rival CEO. The second, a deepfake video of me admitting to selling company secrets. His signature was on the work order. LV 30 copies, I said, full color, on bonded paper. Alex nodded. It'll take about 30 minutes. As the high-speed printer began to hum, I opened my laptop and started typing. Sophie stood by the window, a sentinel watching the bridge. 2 messages, one to the Wall Street Journal, one to Bloomberg. Subject: urgent, evidence of massive securities fraud at Vance Innovations. Liam Vance and Isabel Rossi. Sent October 19th, 2025 at 8:51 a.m. Sophie Keene. My name is Clara Vance. I am the wife of Liam Vance, CEO of Vance Innovations, born March 12, 1984. His company is set to go public today. Attached are 2 critical files. 1, the authentic Q3 earnings report. 2, a falsified version submitted to the SEC. Note the discrepancies. I have digital records detailing a multi-year scheme to defraud investors, with total misrepresentations exceeding $90 million. I also have internal email chain LI-2025-381, linking Isabel Rossi to the conspiracy. My husband is attempting to illegally invalidate our prenuptial agreement based on fabricated evidence. The IPO launch party is scheduled for 6 p.m. at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Please investigate this information. Clara Vance. I attached the 2 reports and sent the emails. A minute later, an automated reply arrived. Case file WSJ 2025 7742 opened. Assigned to senior financial reporter David Chen. We will be in touch. Sophie put a hand on my shoulder. It's done. They have it. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. At 9:30, as Alex handed me the document boxes, the frosted glass door to the office slid open. I froze. Liam's best friend Mark stood there, his tie loose, his suit a mess. His face was gray. He looked like he hadn't slept for days. Clara, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Sophie stepped in front of me. You stood by him yesterday. What do you want? Mark held up his hands, a gesture of defeat. Because I was a coward, and you need this. He opened his laptop and showed me a forwarded email. From Vance Legal to Mr. David Hayes. Subject: strategy for managing Olivia's erratic behavior. Date: September 12th, 2024, 11:48 p.m. Dear Mr. Hayes, a notification showed a transfer of $250,000 was wired to an entity called Croft Holdings, account 702419-B. Then, 20% of my architectural firm's shares, valued at $300,000, was moved to that same account at 11:55 p.m. on September 12, 2024. David's voice was rough. I never approved that transfer. I never signed over my equity. Arthur must have spoofed my credentials and faked my digital signature just like he did to you. I stared at the transaction. The same night Arthur had me committed, he'd siphoned $250,000 and a fifth of my company into Isabel Shell Corporation. I am so sorry, Olivia, David said. I believed his lies. I thought you had turned on me. But this morning, I saw the shared drive alert and checked the logs. The story he told me was a complete lie. The offshore accounts, the internal investigation, it was all smoke and mirrors. He turned us against each other. Chloe looked from me to David. We have to do something, she said. My lawyer is already working on getting Ben out of that clinic, and I'm going with you to the awards dinner. I took a deep breath and nodded. We go together. By the 2 p.m., David's attorney, a sharp woman named Maria Flores, had secured Ben Carter's release. The 72-hour hold was dismissed due to lack of evidence and procedural violations. Ben walked out at 2:20 p.m., looking gaunt but resolute. David drove him straight to my apartment. At 4 o'clock, the four of us stood on the steps of the Chicago Theater. It was me, Ben, my brother David, and his wife Chloe. We had 2 encrypted drives, a laptop, and the cold, hard truth. Ben held one of the drives. It's all on here, he said. The financial trails, the chat logs, the whole plan. If we walk in there, this all goes public. I know, I answered. David handed me a small unmarked flash drive. Secret texts, intimate photos, a shared family cloud account. It was all there. My phone buzzed. A message from my sister, Chloe. Text. Got the backup. On my way to your in-laws. Don't start the drama without me. See. I showed the screen to my brother Matt. A tight, determined smile was his only reply. They were on their way, he said softly. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, checked her watch. Dinner would be served in an hour. I stared at the opulent Chicago penthouse, its windows overlooking the glittering city. This was the home of the Vance family, where my husband, David, had been celebrated for years. Tonight, I was lighting the fuse. We walked inside. At 7 o'clock sharp, the annual Vance family dinner was in full swing. The apartment was filled with David's relatives, about 30 people scattered around the enormous living room. Evelyn, dressed in a severe navy dress, stood like a queen among them. A banner hung over the fireplace reading, Vance and Sons, A Legacy of Trust, 2024. At the head of a long table, David sat with a smug look, a man who believed he was untouchable. I stood by the bar with Matt. The phone in my clutch felt like a bomb. My palms were sweating. Evelyn's voice cut through the chatter. That is why this family is built on loyalty, trust, and unwavering commitment. We believe in total transparency. A few of the older relatives nodded in agreement. Matt leaned close. Wait until she makes the toast. I nodded. At 7:40, Evelyn smiled. Now, before the main course, I'd like to say a few words. I didn't wait for her cue. I simply stood and walked toward the head of the table. The quiet conversations died as everyone turned to watch. Evelyn's smile tightened. I reached the large smart TV used for family slideshows. Her butler moved to intercept, but I was quicker. I connected my phone to the screen before he could say a word. I have something to share, I announced, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. How many lies has your perfect son told to build his perfect life? A shocked gasp went through the room. Evelyn rose, her face a mask of cold fury. Get this woman out of my home. But I was already swiping, and the evidence appeared on the screen behind her. I opened the hidden album. The first photo, a romantic selfie of David with his assistant, filled the screen 5 feet high. Subject, Our Little Secret, 2023. A sailing mishap, $180,000. A quiet murmur rippled through the guests. Phones were subtly raised. Cameras, now recording. I moved to the next file. Next was Rachel Mont, in 2011. A sudden allergic shock. $340,000. I clicked again. Then came Sarah Bennett, 2015. A tragic hit and run for $290,000. Catherine's tone was ice. This is slander, pure fiction. This woman is unwell. I met her gaze. Then maybe this will make sense. I switched to the collection album. 9 portraits lit up the screen. Each was a different woman, bright and unsuspecting. Underneath each picture was her name and a date. Chloe Cole, Rachel Mond, Sarah Bennett, Brenda Coffey, Diana Petrova, Hannah Moss, Claire Delaney, Natalie Fletcher, and the final image. The label was just MH with the date pending. It was a picture he took of me sleeping on the sofa in our penthouse last month. A quiet night I barely remembered. I didn't know he'd taken it. I never knew I was his next target. The room exploded in a chaotic roar. Outrage and disbelief filled the air. My father, Marcus, walked to the front of the room. He grabbed a nearby microphone, his voice resonating with purpose. "That is my little girl," he said, his finger pointed at Chloe's photo. Chloe Cole. She was set to marry Damien Croft in November of 2021. Not 3 months later, she went overboard into the bay. The officials deemed it a freak accident. It wasn't. He killed her for her inheritance just like the others. And Mia Hayes was his next victim. A woman seated near the front began to weep openly. Catherine pointed sharply at my father. "This man is a known agitator. He has a documented history of emotional problems. Nothing he claims is reliable." My brother Liam moved forward, showing his phone to a journalist from the Chronicle. "This should be reliable enough," Liam said. "Damien Croft siphoned $500,000 from my firm's accounts 2 nights ago using a forged signature. The blockchain ledger is right here." The journalist's mouth fell open as she looked at the screen. Catherine hissed to her security team, "Remove these people immediately." But before they could move, the main doors of the ballroom flew open. 4 figures in dark jackets entered, their badges clear on their belts. Their leader, a stern woman with piercing eyes, spoke into a microphone. "I'm Special Agent Rossi, Federal Bureau of Investigation," her voice cutting through the noise. "Damien Croft and Catherine Croft. You're both under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent." The venue was in complete chaos. Guests were on their feet yelling, filming the scene. The media swarmed the stage. Catherine's face went pale. She leaned on the podium, but Damien was unfazed. He stood up, slipped his hand inside his jacket, and revealed a slim, sharp letter opener. The blade emerged with a quiet, lethal click. "Stay still," he hissed. His gaze locked on me. He gestured toward the dining chair. "Have a seat." The air was electric. My brother Ethan rose to his feet, positioning himself as a shield between us. A cold smile played on Damien's lips. "You should have kept your mouth shut, Amelia." He then lunged toward my arm. Ethan reacted instantly, blocking his path. "Don't you dare touch her." 2 of Ethan's friends came in from the patio. One stood in Damien's way, as the other guarded the only exit. Damien stopped, realizing he was trapped. His sister Catherine, a top corporate lawyer, slammed her fist on the polished wood table. In seconds, our elegant family meal had become a hostage situation. Damien didn't fight, he simply radiated fury. Catherine made a move to escape. She snatched her purse, her heels echoing on the marble floor. Ethan's friend David blocked her path. "I don't think you're going anywhere," he said. Catherine froze, her composure finally shattering. The remaining guests just stared, paralyzed with shock. Their phones were all out, recording everything. Daniel held up a tablet, its screen glowing. "For everyone's information," he announced, his voice silencing the polite murmur of the art gallery. "For the past 60 days, my sister has employed a private investigator. As of tonight, we have definitive proof of Ethan's infidelity and a conspiracy to hide marital assets." He tapped the screen, showing a photo of Ethan with another woman. "Thanks to his own hubris," he gestured to my husband, "we have sufficient grounds for divorce, citing adultery and financial fraud, with his sister as a co-conspirator." The silence was crushing. I couldn't move, my legs felt weak. Daniel's hand on my arm was the only thing keeping me upright. Ethan's mother gasped. His father stood frozen, staring at his son. At 8:15, a man in a server's uniform stepped forward. He was pale, in his late 40s, his eyes filled with fear. "My name is David Clark," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm the art appraiser. I was forced to create fraudulent provenance documents back in 2022. I helped him launder money through art, and I'm prepared to give a full confession. A wave of shock moved through the guests. Sophia shot him a look of pure venom, but David didn't back down. He looked at me. I'm so sorry. I first saw Ethan ruin a colleague's career in 2012. His family has always covered for him. They threatened me, but I can't be a part of it anymore. Daniel nodded. Our lawyer will contact you. Your cooperation will be noted by the court. As guests started to leave around 9 o'clock, a young woman made her way toward me. She was an artist, maybe 25, in a simple black dress. Her eyes were puffy as she came to a stop in front of me. You're Olivia, she stated, her voice low. My name is Isabella. I received an anonymous text a couple of hours ago. It warned me I was about to be identified as Mistress Number 2. She took a shaky breath. Ethan was supposed to be my patron. I almost believed his lies. Her hand trembled as she pointed to a large painting. He gave me that original last week, she whispered, a reward for my silence. My heart stopped. That piece was supposed to be in our vault. 3 months later, in November of 2024, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, my hands on my 6-month pregnant belly. The baby kicked gently. Daniel had been staying on the pull-out sofa since September, helping me move and hire an attorney. He made sure I ate every single day. We didn't talk about that night. We didn't need to. Ethan's real estate dealings were under federal investigation for fraud. The judge described his actions as a calculated and malicious deception. Sophia's financial services license was suspended. David Clark's testimony had secured him immunity from prosecution. He sent me a short email. I hadn't replied yet. Daniel had launched a website to support victims of financial abuse, calling it the Olivia Initiative. My lawyer, Jessica, closed the folder on the initial asset freeze. We had located over $5 million in fraudulent real estate investments and had begun the process of equitable distribution. The fight was far from over, but it had begun. On November 15th, 2024, the Olivia Initiative officially went live as a foundation. Daniel was the director, supported by a board of my oldest friends. Our mission? To offer women a network of support to navigate such complex betrayals. I rested a hand on my stomach as the baby moved again. I once thought I couldn't love a child born from so much deceit. I questioned it all. But this child was not his legacy. She was mine, a testament to my own will to survive. She was our second chance at family. This baby was my hope. So that's what I would name her, Lily Rose Miller. Daniel walked over and set a mug of tea beside me. His eyes were full of kindness. Our mother would be so proud of you, he said softly. I offered a small smile. I think she'd be proud of both of us. Outside, the Chicago sky was quiet and gray. My phone lit up with a text from Isabella. Asterisk coffee soon? I'd like to donate a piece for your first fundraiser. I typed back, yes, let's build something new together. I put the phone down, leaned back, and for the first time in months, I felt my body truly relax. The worst was over. My real life was just beginning. Looking back, I see how I fell for the performance. I was ready for a family, and Ethan Stone knew exactly what part to play. He didn't just take my money, he took my ability to trust. Don't be me. Don't sign anything without your own lawyer, no matter how much you're in love. Don't ignore red flags because you want the storybook ending to be true. Don't allow a partner's family to create a wedge between you and your own support system. Sibling jealousy can hide behind a welcoming smile. Betrayal is often delivered with a kiss. Sophia Stone didn't just enable her brother's affair. She designed his financial exit plan using her professional knowledge as a weapon against me. That isn't protection, it's a conspiracy. I learned 3 things. First, always have your own separate legal and financial counsel. Love requires honesty, not blind faith. Second, your biological family can hurt you, but the family you choose, like Daniel, is the one that will save you. Third, you are more resilient than you can imagine. Even when they try to leave you with nothing, they can't touch your spirit. Daniel being at that gallery wasn't a coincidence. It was a lifeline. He gave me the strength I had forgotten I had. If my story resonates with you, please share your thoughts. What would you do if you realized your partner's own family was plotting against you? Your experience matters, and if you found strength in Olivia's journey, I hope you'll subscribe for more stories of resilience. A note on this story: while based on common patterns of marital fraud and emotional manipulation, certain details have been dramatized for narrative effect. If this content is not for you, please find other stories that are.